our media have by and large done the most incredible job in giving a fair and equitable coverage to political parties across the board. And that's an amazing thing, right? I think because of our media's history, where there was such overt and clear bias under apartheid and such severe restrictions on freedom of expression, that our media, when we became a democracy, were like, we have to take this seriously. They were really appreciative of the fact that they have this fantastic power of freedom of expression, and there was this effort to make sure that when they do cover elections, they cover them fairly, right? And if you look at the monitoring that we've done on every democratic elections, aside from 2016, where under Hlaudi Motsoeneng there was clear evidence of systemic bias, our media have by and large done the most incredible job in giving a fair and equitable coverage to political parties across the board. And that's an amazing thing, right? That in the election period, our media all go, okay, we don't want people to be able to accuse us of something. So even if editorially they come out and say, we suggest you vote for party A, B or C, they still are fair in their news and current affairs coverage. So they have, most of the news organizations have plans on how they're going to cover them. Whether that's equitable or not introduces a different thing, because we've seen increasingly smaller and smaller parties. And for news media, that poses a real problem, right? Because you say, okay,
maybe just continue that we have small parties.
So when we look at equitable coverage, that's a different challenge, because when you look at the number of parties, news media have finite space, right? Even with online sites, they still have finite resources. And being able to say, well, there are now 33 national parties on the national ballot, and several hundred others if you include all of the variations. How on earth does a news organization give equitable coverage to that? Because you can't say it must be equal, because the ANC is the biggest party, but just because they're the biggest party doesn't mean they've got the best policy, or that, you know, a small party shouldn't have coverage because they're small, right? That's, democracy is meant to be about that. So most of them have a way of trying to engineer how they do cover these things, and by and large they make efforts to ensure that they give equitable coverage, right? So the ANC generally dominates coverage across the board. Different media, you see different kind of levels of those things, and then you do find, you know, either often personal clashes or because of where things are, that you start to see efforts to undermine one or two political parties. Another clear trend, though, is that political parties set their agenda, media don't. And that, I think, is one of our unfortunate incidents. So as much as media tend to be very fair, they don't set their agenda. And by that I mean they don't say, what does the voter need to know and what do they not know, and how are we going to cover that? Instead, you get the political parties setting that news agenda, and by and large what that's resulted in, so if you look at when EFF came onto the scene, they got significantly disproportionate media coverage, because they knew that to get into the news, you say something wild and controversial. And they're excellent at, you know, manipulating, driving, working the news agenda to make sure that they get a lot of news coverage. And if you look at MK now, the MK party, they've been doing a very similar, they've used basically the EFF tactic of coming out with outrageous things, actions, marches, you know, ideas that people are going to go, well, that's completely mad. Why on earth would you suggest those kinds of ideas in order to manipulate that news agenda? So where our media have not been at their best, I think, is where they've allowed political parties to determine that news agenda, instead of themselves saying, well, our readers, audiences, viewers are interested in these issues, and then covering those and helping people explain them, understand them.